Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're listening on the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which I highly recommend that you do because not only can you hear this show, but any of the shows that you hear on these two stations on a daily basis, and it's free. It's free to download, it's free to use, and it's sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. Every possible topic that we could broach regarding tonight's Game 4, we will broach it over the course of this program. And I want your thoughts absolutely. 719-247-1313. That is the text and phone line that you can use to join in on the conversation. Allow me to kind of get things going, and then you can pick up where I leave off, and we can start our conversation. The Colorado Avalanche have won, all told now, regular season and playoffs, 63 games. That's a lot. That's more than any other team by a decent margin. They picked up 121 points in the regular season. They won the President's Trophy. They led the league in goals scored and also allowed the fewest in the league. In many ways, this was a historic Avalanche season, not just by Av standards, but NHL standards. If they lose tonight, none of that will matter. In fact, all of that will be used to just enhance the idea of how bad their exit in the playoffs was. How can a team that picked up 121 points, led the league in goals, gave up the fewest in the league, won the NHL's toughest division, so on and so forth, how did they go out like this? Getting swept. That's why this game, to me, is unlike any other that maybe anyone on the Colorado Avalanche have ever played in. Sure, they've all played in elimination games. Not like this. Not with these stakes. In fact, I would say many of them have not been swept before. Just to go at that level before you even get to the season that you had and how you performed in the first two rounds in the playoffs. These guys haven't played in a game that quite has the dynamics that are at play tonight in play. So everything that the cliches that you use for a game like this, they still apply, right? The Avalanche are going to have to play their best game. They're going to have to be the more desperate team. They can't quit. You know, all of those kind of things, they apply. But what this game comes down to more than anything else, beyond, execution on the power play, who plays, who's not playing, and offensive zone entries, all of that kind of stuff pales in comparison to this. Here is Avalanche head coach Jared Bednar.
Everyone's got some work to do, a little bit of soul searching, and as a team collectively we have the same thing in order to get ourselves mentally prepared to go tomorrow night. And again, I think it kind of boils down to not letting the disappointment overcome you. It's about pride and character at this point.
Pride and character. Have the pride to get this one tonight, even with the realization that it's probably not in the cards that you're going to come back and win this series. And if you listen to some of the Avs players, it feels like they understand. As much as they give you the company line and athlete speak, the frustration is so apparent with this team about what's gone on that it's hard for them to lie. basically. It's hard for them to muster the energy to spin what has gone on and what this series has turned into. They know that this Vegas team is probably not one that is going to let the Avalanche become the fifth team in NHL history to rally from 3-0 deficit. Probably not. Okay, and I think they know that. But that's beyond the point. Where today is not about necessarily how the Avalanche win this series. Okay, if they pick up a win at any point in these 3 games, we can entertain that. This is about tonight. This is not about 2 days from now or a potential game 7. This is just about tonight. They probably know that it's not in the cards for them to come back and win this series. But they can't go out like this. With everything they have accomplished, I don't care how good Vegas is. They can't go out like this, even on Vegas's home ice. Does this team have enough pride to not let it end this way? To let it end in the ultimate we didn't belong here kind of way. Like, how different are the Avalanche going to be viewed if they end up getting swept? How much do you look back on what they have done this year and question not the legitimacy, but what did it matter? Like, this is a cup or bust team. What does it matter that they put up? It reminds me of 2021, right? Very similar circumstances. They lose to Vegas after a President's Trophy win, and you were kind of left on, well, what was that all for? What good did any of this do? Any of the awards, any of the accolades? What good is it? You know, going back before this series, if you would have told me they lose in 7 or lose in 6, I would have been surprised. But I would have gone more to, well, clearly Vegas had been sandbagging all year, and now with John Tortorella as the head coach, with Carter Hart in goal, they finally figured out who they are. But getting beaten 4, that's completely different. This team has only lost 4 games in a row once this season, and it was way back on October 26th. And Trent Miner was the goalie in that game. And I'm not picking on Trent Miner. I'm using him as a way to illustrate that this team is supposed to be so far beyond that losing tonight is almost unthinkable. Right? Because this team, as you know, they're not the same as they were. Not just who's in goal. Nazem Kadri wasn't on that team. Nick Wall wasn't on that team. Those 2 players in particular were brought in for the Avalanche to even be a better version of themselves than they were before they acquired them. So this team is supposed to be superior to that one. And yet, they're on the verge of losing 4 straight games. And tonight, they'll start Mackenzie Blackwood in goal. Nathan MacKinnon will play. Cale Makar will play. And history won't remember necessarily what Nathan MacKinnon was dealing with or what Cale Makar is dealing with. Though the box score will not note that Nathan MacKinnon was playing 1 game after taking a howitzer to the side of the knee, or that Cale Makar missed the first 2 games. It's just going to say Cale Makar and his stat line, Nathan MacKinnon and his stat line. Mackenzie Blackwood in his stat line. It's not going to mention that he hadn't played at all in this series. Now, I've always said, if you're good enough to go, all the credit in the world to you, but you're going to be judged on your performance. If you're playing, that's par for the course. So, other than maybe Valeri Nichushkin, this Avalanche team is going to have everybody. And it's just another reason why they can't. You're going to look back and go, that team got swept. McKinnon, Landeskog, Makar, Taves, Kadri, that team got swept. They can't go out like this. And look, I don't want to entertain much beyond tonight, but I'll dabble in it momentarily. You can see it beyond tonight. You can understand what maybe Jared Bednar has told his team. Win tonight, you go back home. Place you've been very good. Okay, you win that, you come back to Vegas, all of a sudden the pressure is now on the Golden Knights. They don't want to go back to Denver for a Game 7. They don't want to deal with the questions of maybe becoming the fifth team in NHL history to blow a 3-0 series lead. So if just simply the pride and character that is required to win tonight and not just bow out, even though it's mathematically not impossible, but mathematically very difficult for them to come back in this series. But you can also add on top of it, telling yourself, convincing yourself that if we win this game, like, we might be able to make this thing interesting. I mean, whatever they need, right? Whatever they need to go out tonight and make sure they win this game. Because none of that other stuff, as pie in the sky as it may seem, none of that's possible if they lose tonight. That's a wrap. It's over. So, how is the team taking all of this? Here's Jared Bednar on his team's mood.
I like the vibe around the team. We had a good meeting yesterday, touched up on a few things this morning on video. I'm confident that we'll be ready to come out and try to better our performance from the other night. You know, doesn't guarantee a win, but I think that our guys' heads are in the right spot and kind of got nothing to lose now. So there's a looseness around our team this morning, and hoping that can do us some good and free us up to go play to our identity tonight.
Now, I would argue that this team, as everything I just said alludes to, I think this team has a lot to lose. In terms of jobs, Jared Bednar's right at the top of the list. Or players, you know, how different is the roster going to look next year if this team loses tonight? And certainly in terms of perception on how good they were even in the first place. Fair or not fair? In some people's minds, the perception of this team is going to change. But the point that Jared Bednar is taking is making well taken. Like, I understand what he's getting at. Nobody is picking the Avalanche from here on out. Everybody is out on the Avs. In fact, I have yet to speak with somebody today that is even taking the Avs to win tonight. Everyone I have talked to says it's over. And the expectations in that way have completely shifted. When is the last time that you looked at a game like you're looking at this game? The Avalanche have always had the burden of expectation. Now they don't. I don't want to say there's pressure on Vegas. We're not to that point yet. But now the expectation is with the Golden Knights. Everybody now realizes what this team is. So the expectation is now Vegas is the better team. And they should beat the Avalanche, even as difficult as it is to sweep a team. So that's a different dynamic than this team has dealt with in a very long time. And it can be a bit free. And how much of the mistakes that have been made in this series in terms of puck handling and defensive breakdowns can you attribute to the Avalanche trying to do too much? The Avalanche putting too much pressure on themselves? I think a lot of it. But now they don't have that. Maybe some people are taking them tonight, but nobody's taking them to come back and win in this series. So just look at it that way if you have to. Game 1, Avs were supposed to win. They lose. Game 2, well, surely the Avalanche bounce back in Game 2. They lose again. Game 3, they absolutely cannot lose this game under any circumstances. They lose anyway. Now the question is, when is Vegas going to close it out? Not if, when. It'll be a different dynamic tonight. But what I just keep coming back to is this team is too good. This team is too talented. This team is too well coached to go out like this. That's just kind of where I'm at. It can't be this way. But I cannot bring myself to do anything other than say, I think Vegas wins tonight, but I've been wrong about every game in this series so far. And I've been wrong about the series in totality. Just ask any of the numerous Golden Knights fans that are in my mentions on Instagram. I'm getting clowned because a couple of weeks ago, I said that I don't see how you can beat this team 4 out of 7 games. Now, the nuance of Cale Makar being out for 2 games and all that kind of stuff that is sometimes lost in the social media discourse. But whatever, I'll own it. It's the way I felt at the time. I don't feel that way now. But I've been wrong about every game of this series so far. I've been wrong about the series as a whole. So maybe there's something there. The fact that I think Vegas closes it out tonight. But that's all I can do because this entire thing has been such a shock. Yeah, I'm sure it's been a shock to you, and it's been a shock to the Avalanche players. I know that. Nobody expected it to be here. Even the Golden Knights fans in my mentions did not expect their team to have a 3-0 series lead. Nobody expected this. We're all shocked and trying to figure out what is happening. But if I'm not watching with high expectations, you're not watching with high expectations, the Avalanche are playing without high expectations, let's find out what that does. Let's see what that can do. Game 4 tonight, 7 o'clock, Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, the number 719-24-7, 1313. Is it over tonight for the Colorado Avalanche? And coming up next, I don't know how many stops you can pull out tonight if you're Jared Bednar, but there is one available to him, and he's pulling it. I'll tell you what it is next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Well, in situations like the Avalanche are facing tonight in Game 4 on the verge of being swept by the Golden Knights, you got to look around and see what you can change, what stops you can pull out to try and just survive. I mean, that's what tonight's about. It's just about surviving. Forget about what it means for the series. And really, there's only one thing other than changing up the messaging, which I think Jared Bednar has done. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's a departure from what you would expect, kind of Jared Bednar, to his pregame morning talks with his team. I found it quite interesting. We'll get into that later. But in terms of personnel, in terms of scheme, game plan, really the only thing, or at least the most obvious thing, is you make a change in goal. And that's exactly what Jared Bednar is doing tonight in starting Mackenzie Blackwood. Here's the reasoning behind it.
I felt like, Wedge has kind of earned the net in 1 and 2, and we gave him the shot 3, and we didn't get it done. And it's not on him either; it's on our team. So this is a team game, but we're just looking for Blackie to come in and play to the best of his ability and be loose and have fun. It's like I said, the whole team's kind of in that mode right now. And I think if he can do that, we might see the best of him.
And I don't disagree with Jared Bednar's assessment of the situation. The fact of the matter is Scott Wedgwood has been fine. Scott Wedgwood is not the reason why the Avalanche are down 3-0. As I have said, both of these goaltenders, as many goaltenders across the league are, not the guy in Vegas right now necessarily, but the vast majority of goaltenders in the NHL are extensions of the team in front of them. The glory days of NHL goalies is for now gone, right? The guys that are in the league now aren't what you and I came up with Waugh and Hasek and Brodeur. And there's some nuanced reasons for that. If you want to get super nerdy about it, Scott Wedgwood actually talked about this a couple of days ago, and just the way that the game is played, and it's less north and south, more east to west, all of this kind of stuff. That's for another day. But the fact of the matter is we don't look at hardly anybody in the league today and put them on the same level as some of the greats that we saw. And they were plentiful, right? It's like every good team had a great goalie. And it wasn't just because the team was great. It was that you saw that goalie stand up and make some phenomenal saves, highlight reel saves. That's just not happening as much anymore in the NHL. So Scott Wedgwood hasn't been the problem, but he hasn't been the solution. You thought he was doing that in the first period in Game 3, just as you thought that the Avs were doing a lot of good things, a lot of the things they should have been doing all along in the first period of Game 3. But Scott Wedgwood has been fine. He has earned the starts that he has gotten. And he hasn't been the reason why they've lost by any stretch of the imagination. But now you got to try to catch lightning in a bottle. Now you got to find something. And hope that Mackenzie Blackwood can be capable of more than Scott Wedgwood has been capable of, or even Mackenzie Blackwood this season. Like, there's a reason why Scott Wedgwood he's led the league in goals allowed average. He's led the league in save percentage. He was good the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. I don't fault Jared Bednar for making the decisions that he's made in goal. But you got to try something. And here's Jared Bednar on the message that he delivered to his new starting goaltender.
I kind of went back and talked to him a little bit about the San Jose days, like they're a rebuilding team. We'd go in there and play them, put up 55, 60 shots, and we'd win 1-0, and like he's not going to face 60 shots tonight. And I feel like if he's loose and confident and playing his game, he has the ability to not only win us games, but steal us games.
The thing about Mackenzie Blackwood, you haven't necessarily seen it this season as much as, and he was good, right? They won the Jennings Trophy because they had the best goalie tandem in the league. But I can't off the top of my head recall like an unbelievable Mackenzie Blackwood performance like the ones that Jared Bednar is mentioning there. But that's always been the thing with Mackenzie Blackwood. Out of the two goaltenders, he's always been the one with the higher ceiling. But he's also the one with the lower floor. And I think Jared Bednar at times this season has rather he go with the higher floor guy, with the idea that goaltending does not cost the Colorado Avalanche. And for much of this season, I said, if the Avs are going to hoist the Stanley Cup, it will be with Mackenzie Blackwood in goal. But that's the premise that I was working on, was that Blackwood has shown through the course of his career that the talent is more than it is with Scott Wedgwood. But at every turn, as much as I said that, at every turn, the Avalanche kept winning with Scott Wedgwood. Scott Wedgwood would turn in good performance after good performance. He led the league in goals allowed average and save percentage. Like, he kept waiting for that version, the San Jose version of Mackenzie Blackwood, the reason why you brought him in. And he hasn't been bad. That's not what this is about, but he hasn't been that player. So as much as Jared Bednar is trying to de-stress his team, adding him to this stressful situation of, we can't lose tonight, our season is on the line, maybe it does bring that out of Mackenzie Blackwood. You have to try it. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have to try it. This isn't about what Scott Wedgwood is or is not. This is about, you're down 3-0. You have another goalie that you at least have trusted to be part of a tandem most of the season. You don't have many other places you can go to try and unlock something with your team. This makes all the sense in the world, and I can't guarantee, nor will I, that Mackenzie Blackwood is going to stand on his head tonight. But you got to give him that chance. You've given Scott Wedgwood plenty of chances that he's deserved, but he hasn't been able, other than the first period the other night in Game 3, hasn't really shown the ability to bail out the Avalanche, is another good way to put it. You got to see if Mackenzie Blackwood can bail you out. To that end, Albert texting in, 719-247-1313. Will the Avs win? Will Blackwood outplay Hart? Kind of, if you're asking me one thing, you got to answer this question. Hart has been better throughout the series so far. The Avs are talented everywhere, but Bednar refused to choose the number one goalie. That decision will most likely cost the team this series and him his head coaching job. I don't think that will be the reason, unless Mackenzie Blackwood is phenomenal tonight, and then the Avs end up losing somewhere along the way from Game 5 and beyond. and we look back and we say he messed up not putting Mackenzie Blackwood in. But also, what's that point? Like, John Tortorella did it with 8 games left in the regular season. Like, I just have a hard time, and I guess it's Jared Bednar's job to be able to have the finger on the pulse of his team and know better than I do when the time to put in Mackenzie Blackwood was. But he did that in the last series, and Mackenzie Blackwood did not impress. So I guess my question back to you is, what was the point? Was it game 3? I could see that. Was it game 1? No. Was it game 2? No. And I don't even totally believe that was game 3. I think this is the right time. But your assessment of the series, and one big reason why Vegas is where they are, is absolutely on point. It's absolutely Carter Hart. It's the reason why they're even here. I mean, in Vegas, they have to be wondering about an alternate timeline where they just stuck with Aiden Hill, which if Bruce Cassidy was still the coach, that would have been the case. I mean, I don't think Vegas gets here without Carter Hart. So should Jared Bednar have looked at that situation earlier on and made the switch to Mackenzie Blackwood? I don't see it. I don't think he should have. And I think he chose a number 1 goalie. He chose Scott Wedgwood. But it's not working out. So try Mackenzie Blackwood. But I think there are other reasons. The second period of game 3 is what I'm going to keep going back to. The second period of game 3 is what I think will cost Jared Bednar his job. Or what I think should. Or was a sign that maybe this had run its course, that 10 years on the job is long enough and it's time for a new voice. I don't think it's his unwillingness to put in Mackenzie Blackwood early in this series, but I mean, the first time that any of us can predict what's going to happen in this series will be the first time. So if Mackenzie Blackwood is phenomenal tonight, and yet the Avs at some point still lose the series, and you're saying if only Mackenzie Blackwood was in goal, then yeah, add that to the list of why Jared Bednar might not be the guy to coach this team moving forward. But I'm looking at his reasonings, his process, and I'm looking at the play of both goalies, and I'm saying this is the first real off-ramp he's had, is tonight. And we'll see what Mackenzie Blackwood does. 7 o'clock, Extra Sports 1300. As far as the team in front of Mackenzie Blackwood, good news on the Nathan MacKinnon front, but how much Nathan MacKinnon are they actually going to be getting tonight? That's next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Nathan MacKinnon is in tonight for the Colorado Avalanche. The question, I think, ultimately just becomes how much of him are they getting? Before I get to that, let me back up a step. I am not surprised whatsoever that Nathan MacKinnon is giving it a go. And I don't think his teammates are either. Here's Josh Manson.
If he can't go, it's because he cannot go. Like, he will do everything in his power to play, to stay in the game, to help our team win. Like, that's just the type of player he is. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I love following him as a leader. It's just that I know I'm getting everything I got out of it. I know I'm getting everything that he's got to play.
Yeah, just not surprised. And the after the injury was a big. I mean, he was back there out on the ice, and you could tell that he was in a lot of pain. He wasn't able to do what he normally does, but yet he was out there, and he was trying to make something happen. And I don't know that the Avs can win with that version of Nathan MacKinnon. I really don't. But it's kind of like the Mackenzie Blackwood thing. Is he truly the better goaltender than Scott Wedgwood? I think the entirety of this season will tell you that no, he's not. But you got to try it. You got to try it and see if Mackenzie Blackwood unlocks something in himself under these circumstances. It's kind of, and it's the same thing with Nathan MacKinnon. Yeah, I don't think a hobbled Nathan MacKinnon is going to be enough for the Avalanche to win tonight, but you got to see maybe he's not as hobbled. Maybe he could do a little bit more for you than what he was able to do at the tail end of Game 3. And regardless of how much Nathan MacKinnon the Avalanche are getting tonight, Jared Bednar will take it.
For him to be able to come back out, get some work done early or late in the second period in the intermission, and be able to come out and then even try and help us on the power play and empty net situations. If that's all he can do, we'll take it, right? It's better than anything else, in my opinion, we can put on the ice. But just shows his character and leadership and his desire to win.
He's a gamer. No doubt about it. And I think and I was talking about this yesterday, I think we now realize that the most valuable player for the Colorado Avalanche is Cale Makar. Like, from now on, anytime you get asked the question of who's the top player that the Avalanche cannot be without, it's Cale Makar. Because this team just looks too wildly different when he's not running point for them, when he's not on that blue line, to say anybody else. And look, Nathan MacKinnon is extremely valuable. Gabriel Landeskog, we've seen the Avalanche with and without Gabriel Landeskog and the difference that he makes. That's why you have a core of players. The idea is the core is important, and you need the core intact in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. But if you're ranking these guys, Cale Makar is number one. Everything that they do is made possible because of what he does on the blue line. That is very uncommon amongst defensemen that we have ever seen. But Nathan MacKinnon's, maybe it's 1A, 1B, 1C. They need Nathan MacKinnon, and they need more of Nathan MacKinnon tonight than they got at the tail end of Game 3. But it's been a couple of days. Right? I don't play a doctor on the radio, but I mean, it's got to be a little bit better, right? And that every little bit helps when you're in this desperate situation like the Avalanche are. And then there's And then how much more can Cale Makar provide? He talked about being kind of a bystander, a passenger a lot of times in game 3 because it just didn't look like he trusted being back out there on the ice, trusted that shoulder. I don't know if Jared Bednar's comments, put him over the edge and he's like, well, I got to play now. Jared Bednar just said that only I know when I'm ready to play. I don't think it's so much that as understanding how much the Avalanche need him and why Cale Makar was out there, but you can do that at the detriment to yourself. And it was clear, even though the Avalanche were much better in period number 1 with Cale Makar on the ice than they had been the previous 6 without him, he still wasn't close to what he normally is. Could that also get a little bit better tonight? I mean, that's what you're looking for, right? If Nathan MacKinnon can be a little less hobbled than he was at the end of game 2, if Mackenzie Blackwood can be just a little bit more than Scott Wedgwood has been, if Cale Makar can trust the shoulder a little bit more than he did in game 3, you add all those other things up with the desperation, which with maybe Vegas letting off the gas a little bit. I mean, it has to, tomorrow, if the Avs end up winning, we do have to acknowledge the distinct possibility that Vegas let their foot off the gas a little bit, given that they're up 3-0. But you add all of these things up and you say, doesn't make the difference tonight. Does that mean that the Avs, for the first time in this series, win? Could. I mean, they lose games 1 and 2 without Cale Makar. They look better, at least to start game 3 with him. We'll find out. It's going to be fascinating here. Let me go back. Tom, you have a good text that I do want to get to, but I don't have enough. I want to leave enough room to fully discuss what you're bringing up. And there's some sound from Jared Bednar that highlights your point, but let me go back to the goaltender conversation because Albert checked back in. Said the time to name a number 1 goalie was in February. The team psychologically needs to know who their guy in net is and that they can trust him. Having 2 goalies is similar to having 2 quarterbacks. Goaltending, because of Bednar's choice to not name a goalie, is the reason the Avs are failing. I just, but you're saying it should be Blackwood, and I'm saying there's a lot of context clues to say that he chose Scott Wedgwood as his number 1 goaltender. I mean, he paid lip service to the idea of we trust both of the guys and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that with nothing left to clinch down the stretch of the season, he gave both of them basically equal time. But I think and the team knows better than we do what's being said behind closed doors. How are the players perceiving it? I think Scott Wedgwood was the number 1. Now, does all parties involved need that, Jared Bednar saying Scott Wedgwood is our guy? Do they need that? I think maybe a lot of fans do. I think if you watch this team, especially in the playoffs, they have a number 1 goalie. It's Scott Wedgwood. And the only reason Mackenzie Blackwood is playing tonight is because the Avs have no other choice. They have to throw everything out there and see what happens. But even John Tortorella has said, he said as recently as after game 1, talking about Adin Hill and how much they trust Adin Hill. So a lot of coaches do this. I think Scott Wedgwood has been the number 1 goalie for a while now. It's just Jared Bednar didn't want to put Mackenzie Blackwood, a guy that, by the way, is starting an extension after this year and is going to be with the Avalanche long term. I think, I don't want to call it lip service, but I think he's serving a couple of different masters here. It's first and foremost, what goalie gives us the best chance to win? That's been Scott Wedgwood the whole way through. But there's also a Mackenzie Blackwood's going to be here. And I need to keep his confidence up, and I need to let him know that we haven't given up on him. I think it's been a bit of a precarious position that Jared Bednar has been in, because I think even as recently as midway through the season, there was a thought that eventually Blackwood would be the number one guy. And he just never grabbed it. Scott Wedgwood put up the numbers that he put up, and Jared Bednar had no other choice. I think he had every intention of Mackenzie Black. I think the move by Chris McFarland, the moves when he replaced the entire goalie room, was with the idea that Mackenzie Blackwood would be his starter. And Scott Wedgwood would be a very good backup. But Mackenzie Blackwood just has not grabbed the bull by the horns. But if you're second guessing Jared Bednar, you certainly wouldn't be the only one. Mackenzie Blackwood winning this game, stealing this game for the Colorado Avalanche would certainly lend credence to what you're saying, Albert. But I just think they've had a number one goalie this whole time. He hasn't said it explicitly, but it's been Scott Wedgwood. More after this. Welcome in. Great to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show anywhere you scroll, including on Instagram at GingeWatch. I wish I could take credit for my Instagram handle. I cannot. Shouts to my former coworker, JP, for coming up with that one. But yeah, appreciate it. And appreciate the follow as well, if you would be so kind. And appreciate any comment that you might drop as well. And I can prominently display it on the live stream for all to see. Topic du jour. Game 4, Avalanche trying to avoid elimination. I think the text I received from my colleague and sometimes producer of this radio program, DJ Michaels, says, I have no confidence in the Avs, but I still have hope. I think it only comes from me being a fan and seeing how much they accomplished this year. And that gets to my main thesis of the day, what I started the show with. For everything that this team has done, they surely cannot go out this way, can they? 121 points. Won the President's Trophy. Took only one additional game than the bare minimum to get through the first 2 rounds of these playoffs. Led the league in goals scored. Gave up the fewest goals. Hart Trophy finalist. Norris Trophy finalist. Surely this team cannot get swept. I think what we have to acknowledge is that this version of the Vegas Golden Knights is far better than what the Golden Knights have been for the vast majority of the season. That's the credit that they rightly deserve. John Tortorella, and the biggest thing that he did was maybe just let the team be who they are. He said he managed the personalities. That's the impact he's made. He hasn't changed systems necessarily, although they're playing a little bit more direct. Put Carter Hart in net. But this Vegas team that at the beginning of the season we thought was on par with the Colorado Avalanche, now they're starting to show it. And showing even more. So this Vegas team is a lot different, a lot better than the Vegas team that most of us saw throughout the season. But still, it doesn't completely explain why they're up 3-0. They can even be better if you want to say that they are better top to bottom than the Colorado Avalanche. But this much better, a sweep better, I can't buy that. I can't buy that this Vegas team is this much better than Colorado, even with the injuries they've had. Cale Makar missing the first 2 games. Nathan MacKinnon taking the puck to the knee in game 3. Valeri Nichushkin's status uncertain for tonight. We haven't even talked about him. I know that Makar and MacKinnon, suck a lot of air out of the room, because those are more prominent players, but we haven't even talked about the fact that Valeri Nichushkin hardly played in game 3. But Nichushkin, we don't know. Makar, MacKinnon, in to what capacity? How effective will they be? We will all find out together. And Mackenzie Blackwood will replace Scott Wedgwood in goal. But even with the injuries, I still don't know how this Vegas team is a sweep better than the Colorado Avalanche. Perhaps Tom has a reason for it, and I think he does. By the way, Tom, great seeing you the other day. Dope jersey that you were wearing out at Territory Days, by the way. Says this series has not been lost by coaching or goaltending or injuries. It's been won purely by grit and determination. Avs have been out-hustled, outworked, and have not looked sharp. Vegas believes Avs do not. I don't think you're wrong, Tom, but isn't that kind of a shocking realization? Sitting here on the cusp of going to a Stanley Cup final, that what the Avalanche have been locked in and wanting to do and had the goal from the beginning of the season, that somehow they would have meet a team that wants it more than they do. Gabriel Landeskog working his way back for 3 years to rejoin his team to try and win the Stanley Cup. The team with Gabriel Landeskog on it is not hungrier than Vegas. I don't think you're wrong. I just think that's a crazy thing to realize. Now, the mistakes that have happened, that's not a want to thing. That's not a desire thing, as Jared Bednar will explain.
The mindset's in the right place. I think like sometimes it's just an individual that makes a mistake and like he's under pressure and he makes the wrong decision. It's like that's the harder stuff to coach, because if it comes back to cost you, like you need everyone going and you got to try and limit those mistakes. But I don't think it's from lack of effort or lack of buy-in from our team. I just think it's sometimes the way the game goes, and some of those plays, you have to give Vegas credit. Like we're forcing them into turnovers and mistakes too. We just haven't been capitalizing on them, quite as frequently as Vegas has.
Okay, fair enough. That's the answer that you get from Jared Bednar. Very analytic, very black and white. Looking at it, I understand that. That stuff all goes out the window now. To Tom's point, tonight is a night that the Avalanche for 60 minutes have to show that they want this more than Vegas. If they can't want their season to continue more than Vegas just wants to end this series and get ready for the Stanley Cup final, then I don't know what we need to say about this team. Like the desire, the desperation should tilt way in the favor of the Colorado Avalanche. There's no tomorrow for them. There's a tomorrow for Vegas. There's a lot of tomorrows for Vegas. They got a long way to go before they're starting to feel the pressure. How can the Avs tonight for 60 minutes not show that they want this more than Vegas? But I think your read, Tom, is right on it. They are getting outworked. And I think that's where it is. That's what you say. It's not what these players are saying at the post-game podium or in the dressing room. It's on the ice, the 50-50 pucks, the battles in the corners that Vegas is consistently winning in this series. That's what's showing that Vegas wants this more. And throughout the first two rounds of the playoffs, we're talking about the Colorado Avalanche being able to play that kind of game and having that desire to win those puck battles, those battles in the corner, out hustling, out working their opponents, even though both LA and Minnesota wanted to muck up the series a little bit. Be physical. The Avs push right back. Tonight's the night they got to show it. And it's the most obvious statement ever, because if they don't tonight, that's it. That's a wrap. And if it is a wrap tonight, I would need some real convincing from Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic that it's not time to move off of Jared Bednar. And I said this yesterday. This is not a somebody has to pay off with their heads take with Jared Bednar, because I think he's one of the best coaches we have in this league. But if on a night where literally the Avs have no tomorrow, and could be embarrassed tonight by being swept. If this team doesn't respond to the words that Jared Bednar is saying to them, then he's really lost the room. And it's more on the players than it is on Jared Bednar. But also at the same time, too, and you don't fault Jared Bednar because Jared Bednar is a certain type of coach. But you say, is he able to, there's been a different dynamic with these coaches. So you have Jared Bednar, very analytical, very, very left brain, right? And he's found the right combinations all year long. He's pushed the right buttons in terms of who plays with who and what line they're on and what situation they play in. He's a brilliant hockey man. And then you have John Tortorella on the other side talking about how his team has cojones. Like with Torts, it hasn't been about X's and O's. It hasn't been about let's find the right combination. He's found some good combinations, that second line for Vegas. But what John Tortorella has said throughout this series and throughout these playoffs, it's guts, it's resolve, it's maturity, it's all of these intangible things that he keeps talking about, because the reality of the situation is he hasn't had enough time to put his stamp on this Vegas team to say, hey, we play this way on the power play. We're actually going to do this. He hasn't been able to fully implement his systems like Jared Bednar obviously has over a decade. So it makes sense that Jared Bednar is talking, X's and O's, and John Tortorella is talking about mindset and guts and will. But the dynamic that has to flip tonight. Jared Bednar has to challenge the guts, the heart, the want to, the resolve, the maturity. That's what he has to challenge with this team. Like a lot of the X's and O's stuff, that's over with. Guess what? The Avalanche power play turned out, didn't end up being good. Nothing you can do now. There's no power play summit in Milan going on anymore. Like, this is the Avs power play. They're not a great power play team. He's tried all these different combinations, to his credit. He's moved Nazem Kadri up to the top line. He's moved Nichushkin down. He's moved Parker Kelly. He's done all of this stuff. And in this series, it just hasn't worked. So where do you go as the last resort? Maybe not your bread and butter, maybe not what you're known for, but it's the only place to go in a situation like this. Challenge this team's desire to win. Challenge this team's heart. I'm not saying, rip them a new one and criticize them. I'm just saying, tell them that that's what tonight's game is about. Who wants it more? As cliche as that is, it truly is that way tonight because the Avs are facing elimination. It has to be that they want this more. So it's not, what you expect Jared Bednar to do, but it's the only card he has left to play. And I think you are hearing that from Jared Bednar. Hasn't been, unless he's asked a direct question about a certain line or a certain player, it's very much been nebulous intangibles that he has discussed, like pride and character.
Everyone's got some work to do. A little bit of soul searching, and as a team collectively we have the same thing in order to get ourselves mentally prepared to go tomorrow night, and again, I think it kind of boils down to not letting the disappointment overcome you. It's about pride and character at this point.
Not about executing on the power play. Not about preventing odd man rushes, exiting the zone better. That's not the bulk of what Jared Bednar has been doing. And he said it today. Today was a little bit of tactics, but yesterday, the real quality meeting, the big one they had on the off day in Vegas, that was about pride, character, challenging them, want to, all of that kind of stuff. That's what Jared Bednar said. That's almost all of what yesterday's meeting was about. Today's meeting was just like, hey, we're going to do this. And if Nichushkin can't play, we're putting this guy, like normal prep for the game. But the most important time that Jared Bednar has had with his team the last couple of days, he's been trying to push those buttons, not the buttons that we normally equate with Jared Bednar's style of coaching. We've seen it with John Tortorella. And we'll see. I mean, I'm not saying that if Jared Bednar wins tonight, if the Avalanche more accurately win tonight, that means that Jared Bednar, you're in the clear. But you get swept. I don't know how the Avalanche can arrive at any other conclusion than we need to get a new voice in there. Whose fault it is, put it wherever you want. But this is what happens in sports. When a team doesn't seem to respond, the variable that so many teams change is the head coach. And you could say it's the easier thing to do. Yes, that's true. But also you have multiple examples in recent memory here in the NHL where it's worked. Vegas is now doing this twice. Florida turned themselves into a borderline dynasty by doing this. Andrew Brunette won the President's Trophy. That Panthers team that he had was a wagon. And yet they go to Paul Maurice and they win back-to-back titles. If it didn't work, teams wouldn't do it. They're so desperate to find something that works. If changing the coach is not the way to go, then teams wouldn't do it. But it has proven to be. It's not 100%, but it's worked, and it's worked recently in the very league that the Avalanche are, and it's working for the team that's got them in a vice right now on the verge of being swept. A sweep tonight, I don't know how the Avalanche bring back Jared Bednar. Anything beyond this, we'll have that discussion when the time comes. But one thing I can say, if the Avalanche end up getting swept, I don't see how they can bring back Jared Bednar. And I think Jared Bednar, in a quiet moment, would realize that, and that's why he's taken the tone, and it's more about the intangibles. It's more about wanting it and heart and pride and character. Because he's done all he can do. Short of putting in Mackenzie Blackwood, which he is tonight. But he's done everything tactically he could do. It's up to the team now. Game 4 tonight, 7 o'clock, Extra Sports 1300. Our conversation continues next. Taking your thoughts on tonight's game 4, Avs and Knights. As you have probably surmised, if the Avs lose tonight, that is a wrap. And many people are starting to weigh in, as you might expect, on whether Jared Bednar should lose his job over this. And longtime Oilers insider Jim Matheson, I saw something from him where he said basically all this talk from angry Avs fans that Jared Bednar should be fired like he's a problem. Come on. Avs at some point may be keeping seat warm for young Denver, David Krall, but if Bednar was fired, he would be out of NHL work 5 minutes. This is always the counter argument from people who want to defend a coach from getting fired. He would be out of work for 5 minutes. The idea was that Bill Belichick will be out of work for 5 minutes. How could you possibly let Bill Belichick go? Jared Bednar, as great as he is, he's not the greatest NHL coach of all time. There's a conversation, less so a conversation nowadays, but there used to be one that whether Bill Belichick was the greatest football coach of all time. To me, it's never good decision making to go, oh, we're going to hang on to a guy, even if we're sure that a change would be best because we don't want him to go across the street. Like, that's not a good reason for not firing somebody. Who cares? And I guess I could speak to Vegas in part of this too. Who cares where Bruce Cassidy ends up? Let him go interview already. You shouldn't be paralyzed by fear because Jared Bednar is going to get hired by somebody in 5 minutes. Yeah, he might get hired by the Vancouver Canucks in 5 minutes. How does that bother you? Like, you can't make a decision that way. I don't want the Avalanche to say at their end of season press conference, whenever it might be, to say we're hanging on to Jared Bednar because he would be hired by somebody else. At some point, you have to act like the smartest people in the room. I mean, all the moves that you have made, how successful you have been as an organization, do you think that maybe you know better than a lot of other NHL organizations? Trust your instinct. It's not an instinct to go, what if he gets signed by somebody else? Then it makes us look bad. Yeah, there was a time where it was thought that Mike Tomlin was going to be on the street for 5 minutes. And guess what? He's working for NBC this year. No takers in the NFL. You can't worry about that. And the Patriots are a great example. Fire Bill Belichick, and they took a big fat L the following year with Gerard Mayo, but then they got Mike Vrabel. I hate that argument. We can't let him go because he's going to get hired in 5 minutes. First of all, if you go the Vegas route, then he doesn't get hired in 5 minutes because you keep him from being interviewed. But at some point, I understand why Vegas initially denied like LA or it was Edmonton first, right? I understand that. But at a certain point, when you got other teams knocking on your door, like at some point, you just got to go, you know what? Go. Like, it's fine. Just go. There's a inflection point where it's okay to be competitive. It's okay to say, you know, we don't want to benefit our rivals, but when enough people come calling and there's enough interest in Bruce Cassidy, Vegas, you just got to let him go. And I'm sure they will. And he may end up in the Pacific Division. I think this is Vegas being Vegas and them not caring a lot about the future employment of Bruce Cassidy, which you could point to and say, well, that it lacks empathy. Yeah. Hello, this is the Vegas Golden Knights. Everything is cold and calculated. But as far as the Avalanche go, like, good if Jared Bednar gets hired by somebody else. You hope that he does, because he's been a good coach for you and he deserves to continue his coaching career as long as he wants. But that doesn't mean that you should keep him employed if the message is not landing. And you can say that the Avalanche should make a move and put the onus on the players at the same time. That's what I'm saying. The players, this is shame on them. Shame. You're not listening to Jared Bednar. But you're going to replace 22 guys or you're going to replace one? That's just what the situation is. And I just hate, I saw it and I hate the argument of, oh, he'll be hired in 5 minutes. Well, first of all, you don't know that for a fact. And second, that shouldn't even enter the mind of the Colorado Avalanche. They should look at their situation in a bubble and say, is this guy best for our team? Not is this guy best for Vancouver or Edmonton or LA? Yes, this series is not on him. At least not primarily. Everybody has to own a piece of this, right? That's understandable. But yes, he's not the main reason why they're down 3-0. But teams make coaching changes for reasons that, like this. He's not mostly to blame, but he's a little bit to blame. And the main thing is this: we need to light a spark. It's the business that Jared Bednar is in. When they're looking for a spark, in hockey, there's a unique thing that you could do, because you could change your goalie or you change your coach. And if this team ends up getting swept, it is abundantly clear to me that they need some kind of a spark. And we could talk about potential moves they make this offseason and when the time comes, but the most obvious one that they can make is getting somebody in there. That is not Jared Bednar. 719-24-7. 1313 back after this. Let's stick with the Jared Bednar topic here for a few more minutes. Got a message on the live stream, which you could totally do. This one from Rich. At the conclusion of the season last year, there was buzz that Bednar might get fired, and they kept him for another year. He is consistently out-strategized in high-pressure situations. The team acts completely surprised at what Vegas is doing, and they shouldn't be. Bednar's days are numbered because he was already on a short leash. And I'll just say that after the Avs lost to Dallas last year, I said he might be on the hottest seat in the NHL. But see, the thing about it is the whole season, the Avs were the best team. So yes, if the Avs would have came out in October, November, December, and just like tanked, went down the tubes, then maybe we would have rekindled that conversation. It was really only until now that conversation gets brought up. I think Rich is 100% right, because I was one of the ones saying he would be on the hot seat. Now, I don't, but again, I'm trying to make the distinction. I don't think that Jared Bednar is out-coached all the time. I don't think that he is. And I think he is a brilliant coach. My point for making a change, or my case for making a change, is that we have seen it spark other teams, including the one that the Colorado Avalanche are down 3-0 to. And it is a very real thing in sports that a message grows stale. Larry Bird said famously that coaches should be changed out every 3 years. Jared Bednar's been on the job for a decade. Like, it's a reality of sports. When you're dealing with millionaire athletes, and this is not praise of the modern day athlete by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But this is what coaches exist to be. To, get their team to elevate their play, to get the most out of their team, to motivate them, to coach them up, all that kind of stuff. And when they can't do that anymore, it's time to move on. It's the nature of it. Nobody wants to see someone get fired, especially someone who has won a Stanley Cup and has taken this team from rubble. Jared Bednar's firing is going to hit harder than Michael Malone's. But it's the reality of the job. I guess I'm kind of in the middle a little bit here. I don't completely agree with Rich's assessment on Jared Bednar in these playoff series that he's repeatedly outcoached. I mean, the guy has tried so many different line combinations. Like, what's the line combination that he hasn't tried that he should? I think Jared Bednar, his strength is the X's and O's. Maybe he has a blind spot for the power play. Like, maybe that's fair. But I think Jared Bednar is actually a brilliant tactician. But he's been on the job for 10 years with many of the same players. It doesn't seem like he's getting through to his team the way that he used to. But I'm in the middle because now here's Ryan on Facebook says, fire Bednar is crazy talk. Do we not remember the dog days before he came? I do, hence my rubble comment. But I guess I'm arguing both sides of the equation here. I'm saying, no, Rich, I disagree with you. I think he's a better tactician than you think he is. But then I'm turning to Ryan, and I'm saying just because a coach is the right guy at one moment in time does not make him the right guy at the next moment in time. And what has happened with this Avalanche organization, it's the same with Michael Malone. He will always get credit for that. And it will always be remembered. He may have his banner up in the rafters at Ball Arena whenever he is done coaching. But is he the right guy? You can't look at 10 years. You got to look at this year or the last couple and just kind of look and say, is he still the right guy? And I'll say this again. I don't know how you could make the argument that Jared Bednar should stay on as the head coach if the Avs lose tonight. I'll at least say that, and then we'll go from there. If this team gets swept, then the message is completely lost. This team just is not getting it. And it doesn't have to be Jared Bednar's fault necessarily that they're not getting it. It's just the fact of the matter that they're not getting it. And they need a coach that could get through to them. They need a little bit different approach. Like you see John Tortorella. I look at what he's doing. I'm not saying John Tortorella should be the next head coach of the Colorado Avalanche as if he was even going to be available after this season is over. But like a little bit of that might be what the Avalanche need. A little bit of fire and brimstone. A little bit of yelling. Seven 719-247-1313. Or they just may need David Carl ready to go. I have seen so many reports. Am I missing something? Has it always been widely known that the Avs are going to make David Carl their next head coach whenever they're done with Jared Bednar? I mean, I get the logic behind it, but I'm saying, is this a widely known thing? I see Dave Pagnotta the other day saying that his take is that whenever the day comes that they move on from Jared Bednar, it's going to be David Carl. Like as if this is in the works. As if David Carl is not interested in these other NHL jobs because he knows he's going to get the Avalanche job. Like I'm probably taking it a step too far here. But then I see this Oilers insider, Jim Matheson, saying at some point maybe keeping seat warm for David Carl. Like, where did this come from? I don't think I'm that far away from Denver. Is this being discussed in Denver? And again, there's a difference between being, if I told you Jared Bednar was no longer the head coach, who would you like? I think a lot of hockey fans in this state would go David Carl. I understand that. Although if the Avs need a little bit heavier of a hand, a little bit louder of a voice, I don't know that David Carl is your guy. But like I could see the argument to say, you know, maybe that's the sell, or maybe for David Carl leaving DU would only be interesting to him if he was taking the Colorado Avalanche job. But the way it's been presented in so many different ways over the last few days, I'm like, wait, am I missing something? Has David Carl been a secret coach in waiting this whole time? My guess is no. My guess is that people are just connecting dots and maybe presenting it in a way that's making me think one thing. David Carl would make some sense. But I said this yesterday when somebody texted in and brought up David Carl. I don't think he would be my first choice. I don't think he would be. Not because he's a college coach, because we know a little bit better than most people do how good of a job he's done. But teams tend to go a different way. And maybe a little bit more, again, I use the phrase fire and brimstone, might be the right fit for the Colorado Avalanche. But at the same time, how many of those guys exist? Hockey guys are usually pretty mild-mannered, pretty even-keeled. So if you're just looking for someone to be somebody more towards the John Tortorella end of the spectrum, I don't know how many of those guys exist. But that would, if I'm thinking about what the ideal candidate for the Colorado Avalanche would be, somebody that has a little bit of that would be an ideal candidate for me. This from Albert. David Carl would be an excellent choice and should take over immediately, says the NCHC Hockey East Big Ten. Yeah, what the NCHC would very much. I think the school here, a couple of the schools here in town would help David Carl move his sofa from in his office from, Magnus or wherever his office is to the offices of the Colorado Avalanche. I wonder. And if we get to this point, reach out to some people, because I would be curious from I've heard a lot of the Avalanche side, like they would be interested, but David Carl has been kind of shooting down NHL offers or NHL interest left and right. Would the Avalanche be the job? Is it family? Is it the city? Is that the sticking point here? I don't know that it is. I think it's what the job of being a college coach entails that doesn't exist. That's not the same thing as being an NHL coach. I think that's what David Carl likes, is the college experience, being a college coach. I don't know if the Avs would be the NHL job that would pry him away. Although it got to be tempting. If this job were to come open and you coach Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog and you don't have to move, but we'll leave that for another day. In the meantime, I want your thoughts on tonight's game. 719-247-1313. Oh, no. I'm watching NHL Network, and I'm seeing Carter Hart sitting in an empty T-Mobile arena, staring out on the ice. You know what vibes that gives off? Remember when Karl Anthony Towns was doing that a couple of years ago before Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets, and he was like jotting down notes? He was studying up on how he was going to defend Nikola Jokic that night. I mean, your process is your process. Right? I have my own game day routine. If that's Carter Hart's, I'm not accusing Carter Hart of being performative in any way. But it comes off as performative. To a lot of people, it would look performative. A lot of people said that what Karl Anthony Towns was doing was performative. I know that they got a camera in the arena. I know people are going to take pictures of me and note that I am here, locked in, studying, going through it. I don't know Carter Hart well enough to know if this is his normal game day routine, but NHL Network just showed a live shot of Carter Hart all by his lonesome in T-Mobile Arena, mentally preparing for tonight's game. He's been one of the big differences. I mean, I don't want to get into all the Carter Hart conversation. If you're following this series, you know by now, ESPN showed it on a graphic just the other night, the timeline of Carter Hart. Not saying I'm a fan of the guy, but I have to acknowledge that his play has been a big difference in this series and has been a huge difference on, he's made a huge difference to make Vegas the team they are now. So that can be true. And you can also say that this dude there's a non-zero chance that he's an absolute garbage human being. Both things can be true. Don't see Mackenzie Blackwood sitting in T-Mobile Arena studying. Surely this will make the difference. If Carter Hart stands on his head tonight and Mackenzie Blackwood gets lit up, we will say, why wasn't Mackenzie Blackwood sitting in an empty T-Mobile Arena alone with his thoughts prior to Game 4? 719-247-1313. We probably won't. That was a joke. Coming up next, we'll reset with the three stories that are driving the show. All Avs-based, the three biggest storylines going into tonight's Game 4. Of course, you can hear it tonight at 7 on Extra Sports 1300 and watch it at the Brass Tap on Bass Pro Drive with $3.50 pints of Coors Light, Coors Banquet, Miller Lite, and Mountain Time. Sports, Spirit, Social, the Brass Tap. More after this. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or whether you're watching anywhere you scroll. I certainly do appreciate it. 719-247-1313 is the number. If you want to text or call into the show, we will open those lines back up here after this segment and let you have your final thoughts before tonight. The big question ultimately is, will the Avs season continue beyond tonight? Now, step down from that, are these the three stories that are driving the show? All right, here's Jared Bednar with story number one.
Everyone's got some work to do, a little bit of soul searching, and as a team collectively, we have the same thing in order to get ourselves mentally prepared to go tomorrow night. And again, I think it kind of boils down to not letting the disappointment overcome you. It's about pride and character at this point.
And we can talk about X's and O's and in which players need to step up and all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, what tonight is about is exactly what Jared Bednar just said. Because this team has accomplished way too much this season to go out like this. Like, it's fine to be able to, just say, you know what? Vegas is going to win this series. History would tell you that. The eyeball test would tell you that. But as far as the series goes, that's beyond the point. All I'm talking about is avoiding a sweep. This team has accomplished too much. They are too talented, too good to go out like this. As much credit as you give Vegas, they're not a sweep better than the Avalanche. They're just not. I refuse to believe it, even with the issues that have plagued the Colorado Avalanche. They are too good to go out like this. They have accomplished too much to go out like this. And if they do go out like this, then none of this other stuff is going to matter. In fact, it's just going to be used to further highlight how terrible this playoff exit is. The 121 points, the leading the league in goals and giving up the fewest, maybe the Norris Trophy and Hart Trophy winners this year. All of that stuff, they'll say, added up to what? Vegas in 4. That's what it added up to. Tonight is Jared Bednar has pushed a lot of buttons with this team in terms of line combinations and strategy. Tonight is just about how can the Avs not want this game more than Vegas does. In fact, I think it's very difficult for Vegas to get up for this game the way they've gotten up for the previous ones. The Avalanche have to want this more. But the play has to show that. The Avalanche need to take what they did in the first period, because I thought you saw a glimpse of it the first period of Game 3, and they got to do that for 60. Because what else are you saving it for? What else are you throttling down for, like you did in the second period of Game 3? You're done after this. So yeah, cliche, leave it all out on the ice. That's what the Avs got to do. But there's a lot of different ways this series could have gone where you could still look at what the Avs did this year and say they accomplished a lot. Losing tonight is not one of them. Losing tonight, getting swept, it's like you might as well sweep away everything that the Avs did this year, because it would be an embarrassing way for their season to come to an end. Now, There are still some tactical adjustments that Jared Bednar could make, and he is making one of them, and that is the subject of story number 2.
I felt like, Wedge has kind of earned the net in 1 and 2, and we gave him the shot 3, and we didn't get it done. And it's not on him either; it's on our team. So this is a team game, but we're just looking for Blackie to come in and play to the best of his ability and be loose and have fun. It's like I said, the whole team's kind of in that mode right now, and I think if he can do that, we might see the best of him.
The irony of Mackenzie Blackwood leading the Colorado Avalanche back in this series into a Stanley Cup when I, for 9 months, have been talking about Mackenzie Blackwood being the goalie that the Avs, if the Avs were going to win a Stanley Cup, it would be Mackenzie Blackwood, only for me to, in recent weeks, go, Scott Wedgwood's the guy. But Scott Wedgwood has been the number one, and I agree with everything Jared Bednar says. Putting in Mackenzie Blackwood is, I'll add one more thing to it, is about catching lightning in a bottle. Can he do some of what Carter Hart's been doing? Can he make a couple of those saves? Can he help the Avalanche steal a game? I'm not going to sit here and say that Mackenzie Blackwood deserves this start. I mean, Scott Wedgwood hasn't done anything to necessarily lose the net, and Mackenzie Blackwood didn't do enough this season to earn the net. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been the best goalie on the Colorado Avalanche. But the thing with Mackenzie Blackwood has always been he has the higher ceiling. He has more talent. But it's just been a matter of, is he going to show that? And I think when Jared Bednar has gone to Mackenzie Blackwood, the 2 times he went to him, one in the middle of the game and gave him the start, I wasn't impressed with Mackenzie Blackwood. I didn't see this high ceiling. So I think it was the right move to not start Mackenzie Blackwood to this point, and it's also the right move to start him now. Timing is everything. Throw him out there, see what he can do. And here's the great thing about tonight. If Mackenzie Blackwood helps save the Avalanche season, he gets the net in Game 5. I'll say that right now. Avs win tonight. Mackenzie Blackwood is the starter for Game 5. But it's the right time. It's the right moment, and maybe in a high-stress environment on the road, facing elimination, even though Jared Bednar has tried to downplay the stress level on Mackenzie Blackwood. This high-stress situation that's naturally high-stress brings out the best. Like in Deadpool, when they, deprive you of oxygen or like torture you, and then all of a sudden your mutant abilities come out. Yeah, I'm a nerd, so what? Maybe that's what happens tonight for Mackenzie Blackwood, and we finally go, that's the guy they acquired last year. This is the guy. He's more talented than Scott Wedgwood. This is their number one goaltender. I get why Jared Bednar is doing this. I would be doing the same thing. Now, as for a certain someone in front of him, here's Josh Manson talking about the subject of story number 3.
If he can't go, it's because he cannot go. Like, he will do everything in his power to play, to stay in the game, to help our team win. Like, that's just the type of player he is. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I love following him as a leader, is just that I know I'm getting everything I got out of it. I know I'm getting everything that he's got to play.
And Nathan MacKinnon is going to go tonight after taking that shot to the side of the knee in Game 3 and was hobbled, but still gave it a go late in the second and in the third period to try and help the Avalanche pull out Game 3. I'm not surprised that Nathan MacKinnon is playing at all because of what Josh Manson just said, but also because, again, now or never. right? You're facing elimination. If you lose tonight, then you got all summer to rehab that knee. But I'm not surprised at all that Nathan McKinnon is playing tonight. But the question ultimately will be, how effective is he? Because you saw him, he had one opportunity to, turn on the Jets as Nathan McKinnon does, and he just didn't have it. He couldn't get out of, like second gear with 36 hours between games. Can he get out of second gear? Can he get to third gear? Because you saw it with Cale Makar. Like, Cale Makar wasn't right in game 3. But boy, just him being on the ice made a lot of difference, at least in the first period, didn't it? Now, Jared Bednar said he'll take, some of Nathan McKinnon's better than none. I agree. If Nathan McKinnon can give it a go, which he is, you need him out there. And then you just hope that he's not feeling the effects as much as he was in game 3. But Makar in, McKinnon in, Blackwood replacing Wedgwood in the net. The only players whose status we don't know yet is Val Nichushkin, who we haven't really even discussed over the last couple of days, despite him hardly playing in game 3, because I think there are more pertinent issues, to be fair. And when Valeri Nichushkin has been on the ice, it's not like he's been super noticeable. So I think that's why he's been kind of put to the wayside. But hey, if he can go, he should go. I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but Valeri Nichushkin's history with potentially series-ending games. For the reverse to happen and Nichushkin to be there when the Avalanche need him, I think would be better than the alternative. Game 4, 7:00, a little bit later start than we've been accustomed to. I like it better, just me personally. You could hear it on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, I'll take your thoughts. 719-247-1313 on these 3 stories that are driving the show. What will it take for the Avs to win tonight? The switch to Mackenzie Blackwood and Nathan McKinnon giving it a go despite taking a shot off the knee in game 3. We'll continue with your thoughts after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. All right, more of you here on this edition of Drive Time Sports. Your thoughts on tonight's game 4. Avs needed or the season is over. This coming in from Rich based on our previous conversation. Says, I think my point was more that in high-pressure situations, these teams fall apart lately. 2022-23, they finished first and lost to the Kraken in the first round. 23-24, lost in round 2. 24-25, lost to the Stars. This year, things were good. Then Vegas punches them, and they don't know how to respond. And I think you and I are more on the same page on that. The thing I push back against, if you're just tuning in, was just the idea that Jared Bednar is not, and I'm going to put words into your mouth, Rich, I don't mean to, but just the tactical side of it, the X's and O's, that he's getting out coached. I don't believe he's getting out coached, but you're right. You're right about the way that these series have gone, and I brought this up yesterday. I wonder if the Avalanche, either in their assessment on whether they should let Jared Bednar go after this series is over or not, look at, 2021, sure, the team wasn't quite built to win a Stanley Cup at that time, but they were also missing Nazem Kadri, who was suspended for the entire series against Vegas, right? They get him back. 2022, boom, they win a Stanley Cup. After that, they've had this entire stretch, other than the year they won the Stanley Cup, they have had some combination of injury, absence, or suspension to one or more of the following people: Nazem Kadri, Gabriel Landeskog, Cale Makar, Valeri Nichushkin. All 4 guys viewed as, I know this version of Nazem Kadri is not a top 6 guy technically, but all top 6 guys, all important members of the Avalanche. And they've either been AWOL, suspended, injured. I wonder if the Avs look at that and say, this isn't on Jared Bednar. And look, what happened with Valeri Nichushkin in Seattle is not Jared Bednar's fault. What happened with Cale Makar going into this series was not Jared Bednar's fault. He didn't get Nazem Kadri suspended. Nazem Kadri hit Justin Falk. I get all that. But I think, to Rich's point, at some point, you need to look at your coach and say, can he get us through a crisis? Crises are going to arise. The Avalanche are a great example. There's going to be some crazy things. Gabriel Landeskog is going to miss 3 years of hockey. Nazem Kadri is going to be suspended. At the time, maybe not that surprising given Kadri's history, but still, he gets suspended for a long time. What happened with Valeri Nichushkin? Nobody saw that coming. Cale Makar has missed 1. And by the way, Cale Makar was suspended towards the end of the Seattle series. That was the first time he's ever missed a playoff game. So who could have thunk that Cale Makar was going to be injured for 2 games of this series? Yeah, none of that is Jared Bednar's fault. But the question that the Avalanche need to ask themselves when the season is over is, knowing that crises are going to happen, that we're going to have a player injured. We might have a player suspended. Who knows? Hopefully the least thing that you want to prepare for or even hope to see is what happened with Valeri Nichushkin. That's a real world human being thing that you never expect or like to see happen, or feel like, oh, we just got to push through. But you go, yeah, this has happened. Well, we can also kind of expect things like this to happen again. Is Jared Bednar the best coach to coach us through those crises? But it's always been injury, suspension, absence. with this Colorado Avalanche team. SEP 2022. Wonder what happened that year. This from Ryan on Facebook. At some point, Blackwood needs to earn the $5.25 million. I'm hoping that starts tonight. And I agree with that sentiment. They signed him. They traded for him for a reason. And they signed him to an extension for a reason. They did not do that with Scott Wedgwood. They brought him in for a different reason, and they have not extended him for a reason. Mackenzie Blackwood was brought in to be the number one goalie of the Colorado Avalanche. They looked at what he has done in San Jose, among other places, and said, man, that guy with that talent playing behind our team, he could be our guy for a while. Hasn't happened. Part of it is on Mackenzie Blackwood. Part of it is the emergence of Scott Wedgwood. But the original plan was that Mackenzie Blackwood would play in games like this. Season on the line, chance to advance, game sevens, that Mackenzie Blackwood will be that guy. Hasn't come to fruition yet. And that's why I say maybe the stress of this stressful situation, hostile environment, season on the line, maybe it brings out the best in Mackenzie Blackwood. Brings out the San Jose days, as Jared Bednar said he spoke to Mackenzie Blackwood about.
I kind of went back and talked to him a little bit about the San Jose days, like they're a rebuilding team. We'd go in there and play them, put up 55, 60 shots, and we'd win 1-0, and like he's not going to face 60 shots tonight. And I feel like if he's loose and confident and playing his game, he has the ability to not only win us games, but steal us games.
That was always the plan. That was always the thought with Mackenzie Blackwood. But circumstances have not, we haven't seen it. Maybe we will tonight. Couple of texts here. This coming in from the 719. It's the Avs role players. You can't free up the Avs primary goal scorers if the role players don't make them pay when high percentage scoring opportunities come their way. Stop hitting the post and the side of the net. Mace, and that is from Mason. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly say, what was the story through 2 rounds of these playoffs for the Avs? The depth. Look at all the depth. 16 different goal scorers. Well, now Avs are getting no depth scoring, and Vegas is getting all of it. It's Brett Howden. It's the defenseman. His name escapes me, but the guy that scored earlier in the series that hadn't scored in the NHL in 4 years. Like, what the biggest story of the Avs playoffs were has now gone away, and Vegas is the one that's doing it. And if we're going to look at players that need to step up, I think Brock Nelson is at the top of the list. I think that I guess you give a little bit of a pass, not a pass, but you give Valeri Nichushkin a little bit of leeway dealing with an injury, but not much, because he hasn't been producing the way that the Avs need him to. And these aren't guys, these are top 6 guys. Right? And that is depth. Like, outside of Makar and Landeskog and McKinnon, everybody is depth, some form of depth. But I'm not talking depth like, Parker Kelly, Logan O'Connor. Although if they popped up, that would be huge for the Colorado Avalanche. But I'm talking about guys that are in the top 6. Arturi Lehkonen. Like, it's none of these guys. The blue liners outside of Cale Makar, who does get a pass given what he's been dealing with, about one of them step up. I mean, it just feels like the Avalanche have not, I know they scored 3 goals in period number 1, but it's like in game 3, but it just seems like they've gotten no production from anybody. Marty Necas, 1 goal these entire playoffs. It's not even depth as you traditionally think about it. Guys that are in the bottom 6 or the third D pairing. It's the guy that they got in return for Mikko Rantanen. It's their second line center. It's the guy that everyone marveled that the Avalanche were able to bring him in, Nazem Kadri. None of those guys have produced. I mean, you'll take anybody, but there's some guys that you look at and you go, you're definitely not at the level you need to be in this series. I don't know that I'm looking at Nick Waugh and Blankenberg and some of these other players to be the ones that, win the day for the Colorado Avalanche. There are easier guys to point out and easier guys that have produced before. Necas had a career year. I mean, I guess I will loop in Parker Kelly because he had a career year. Brock Nelson had one of the finest years of his career. Those guys. You need to step up. Texture adds, if any of them would score a goal, that would be appreciated. Yeah. If Mackenzie Blackwood could score a goal, be great. Anybody. You'll take goals from anybody tonight if you're an Avalanche fan. This one from the 719 on the topic of the Avalanche not going out like this. And I think that if they lose tonight, I think definitely we'll be talking about Jared Bednar losing his job. But this from the 719, it's already embarrassing. One more loss is not going to make it more embarrassing. They were favored to win this series. I lost tonight. A loss tonight isn't any worse than 0-3 right now. And you may be right to an extent, because I said on the show yesterday that period 2 of game 3 might be the moment that we look back on and say that cost Jared Bednar his job. And so, yeah, losing tonight would not, it would just add to it. But I do think it adds to it. I mean, I'll just throw out a scenario here. So, all right, they don't get swept tonight. They lose in game 5. Okay, I could see, hasn't gotten a ton more embarrassing. Hasn't necessarily made it that much better for Jared Bednar to keep his job. But what if the Avs force a game 6? What if they force a game 7? And again, it's what if, and it's not that I think this is going to happen, but there is a way to save some face here. Winning tonight may not accomplish that. But losing tonight, it would be worse. It would be worse than being down 0-3. Getting swept is worse. A win tonight may not ultimately change Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic's mind as it pertains to Jared Bednar's future employment. But in hindsight, as we look back, if this Avs team is able, to get to a game 6, let's say, then I think some people, maybe not you, but I think some people kind of forget, how bad this has been for the Colorado Avalanche, because they look like, oh, they lost. That was a really disappointing year. And they see that the Avs lost in 6. They should have won the cup that year. Right now, it's the Avs are collapsing. This is embarrassing. I think battling back in this series and making it interesting would save some of that embarrassment. And then this one from Tom, and then we'll take a break. How did the coaching change work out for the Nuggets? Bednar should not be gone. They need more workers. And that's the other side of it. You're absolutely right, Tom. We can discuss whether it's the right call for the Avalanche to move on from Jared Bednar. And that's one conversation. But then there's another half of it that if the Avs do decide to go through with this and relieve Jared Bednar of his duties, you got to get the next one right. And to your point, the Nuggets did not. At least I don't think so. I don't think they got it right with David Adelman. You have to get it right. Vegas fired Pete DeBoer. Then they got it right because they got Bruce Cassidy. Then they fired Bruce Cassidy, and it looks like they got it right with John Tortorella. The Florida Panthers fired Andrew Brunette, and they got it right with Paul Maurice. The Avalanche have to do that. It's a difficult thing to do. And not to go too far down this road, because we'll certainly have plenty of time to discuss this once this season does ultimately come to an end. But is there a world where David Carl is like their David Adelman? Like, I get it. David Carl's not on the staff or anything like that, but just you like a guy for a variety of reasons, but maybe you don't quite understand that he may not be the right guy right now. You may like David Carl, you may like David Adelman and appreciate what they do, but that still doesn't necessarily mean they're the right guy right now. Timing in life is everything. Is David Carl the right guy to take over the Colorado Avalanche after, let's say they lose tonight? To take over a team that was swept out of the Western Conference Final? Ugh. It's a tough spot to walk into. But you're right, Tom. You have to get it right. But the first step is deciding whether you're looking at making a move. Should you make the move? And then it's who do you get? 719-24-7. 1313. Game 4 tonight. 7 o'clock. Extra Sports 1300. Back after this. If I haven't done a good job today of convincing you that you should want the Avalanche to win tonight, that it would be important for the Avalanche to win tonight, allow me to add one more thing to the mix. Vegas Golden Knights fans are being really mean to me on social media. So a couple weeks ago, I said on this show that I don't know how a team beats this Avs team 4 out of 7 games. Now, could we argue that this is not the same Avs team? Semantics? Perhaps. But no Cale Makar for 2 games. Does change it a little bit, but fair enough. I said it. My point was that Vegas was not going to beat this Avalanche team. This was after the Minnesota series that I said this, and the Vegas Golden Knights fans have come out of the woodwork, and they are mercilessly attacking me on Instagram in the comments. And I'm about to the breaking point. Like, I can't. I'm getting a little bit bullied here. So the Avalanche need to win. The Avalanche need to turn this series around, and they need to win this series. So my take will age like fine wine rather than milk on the counter. Funny how the Vegas fans have not found the video posted about me saying that this Vegas team was going to turn out. We were going to look at this Vegas team and say they're better than anybody the Avs have faced in these playoffs. Funny enough, Golden Knights fans haven't found that one. So Avs need to win for that reason. And, if you want to chime in, come to my rescue, I'd certainly appreciate it at Gingerwatch or at Extra Sports 1300. It's posted both of those places. Worth a follow, I think. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but it's all in good fun, right? It's all sports. We got to take it as well as we can dish it out. And Vegas Golden Knights fans are riding high right now, as they should be. Their team looks wagon-esque and has certainly made us doubt anything that we saw with the Colorado Avalanche this season being real. So we'll see what happens tonight and whether the Avs can at least stay alive here. Couple other things I want to get to. I'm watching a segment on an NHL network where they're discussing, who has a better chance to win the Cup, Vegas or Carolina. And fair enough, you're asking the question about the two teams up in their series. I'm watching the Eastern Conference, and I said they don't. Even if Carolina gets out of this, they don't know what they're waiting for. They got a better idea than the Avs, maybe, having watched what Vegas has done to the Colorado Avalanche. But I watched the Eastern Conference final. I'm like, Montreal is not Vegas, and Montreal is not Colorado. The fourth best team left in these playoffs is Montreal. And I think Montreal is a good team, and I think they're going to be good for a while. Like Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Dobish in goal, the way he's played, like Montreal, they're not going anywhere. They're a good team. They're not as good as the Avs, Golden Knights, or Carolina. And I don't think that was ever on the table, to be quite honest. In fair play to Carolina, they're showing that they're the better team, even though they've won in overtime the last 2 nights. They've been deserving of the win because they've been clearly the better team of the two. But Carolina, it's going to be a different, just trust me. Take it from a guy who has watched the first 3 games of this Avs Golden Knights series. There's nothing that can prepare you in a series against the Montreal Canadiens for what Vegas would bring to the table in a Stanley Cup final. Not saying Carolina wouldn't win, but the far greater test, it's kind of like the Knicks, winning the East. And credit to them, because they're doing exactly what you would ask a team in the Eastern Conference to do. You need to just annihilate everybody in your path, because we are not going to give you any level of credit if you're eking out 7 game wins or 7 game series wins against Orlando and Toronto and even Cleveland. New York Knicks aren't doing that. New York Knicks are beating teams by an average of 23.5 points a game. Like, the Knicks are dominating. But that's the standard. That's what you have to do in the East, because we're looking at these NBA playoffs and we're saying the Knicks are a great story, and they are. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, I like the whole lot of them. I don't like that the organization fired Tom Thibodeau, but I like Mike Brown. I like what the Knicks are doing. But we're watching the West out here, if you still are, after the Nuggets got eliminated. And we're looking at San Antonio and OKC, and like, New York's not playing a single team even close to as good as these two. But when that's the case, what do you have to do? Style points. The Knicks are winning style points. So I still wouldn't take the Knicks to beat. I don't think either of these two teams, OKC or San Antonio. But I can't ask them to do any more than what they've done. They've absolutely run roughshod over the Eastern Conference. And maybe it's because of my family ties, but it does not bother me when a New York team is playing for a title. So good for the Knicks, good for that fan base. And yes, it's good for the NBA if the New York Knicks are playing in an NBA Finals. But they're fun to watch. They're good. They're a likable bunch. And can you imagine if OKC ends up playing them? That's good versus evil. You may not like New York. You may not like New York fans, but how in the world are you going to root against the Knicks if they're playing the Thunder? But there's still time. Also, if you're not into the hockey or you're kind of out on the Avs, 6:30 tonight, it will be a pivotal Game 5 between San Antonio and Oklahoma City. The injuries for OKC are testing the depth. AJ Mitchell, Jalen Williams. Could this be the crack in the armor here for the Thunder to where the Spurs take advantage and get through to an NBA Finals to play the New York Knicks? I wouldn't mind that matchup at all. In fact, that's the matchup I want to see. I don't want to see OKC New York. I want to see San Antonio New York. Party like it's 1999, right? So Game 5, San Antonio, and they got to stop showing Carter Hart chilling in T-Mobile Arena. They keep showing it on NHL Network. Stop it. 1, I know he's not out there anymore. 2, it just looks very performative on the part of Carter Hart, who has certainly not endeared himself to hockey fans across North America through this run. But they keep showing him just chilling, looking at the ice. Don't think it's performative, but it looks performative. That's what I'm saying. What was the other thing? To the point of the Knicks, Becky Hammon being asked, remember her famous that you can't, Jalen Brunson's too small. Becky Hammon's doubling down, and she should, because she said you couldn't win a title with a player of the stature of Jalen Brunson. Knicks have not won a title. They still got to play San Antonio or Oklahoma City. So why would Becky Hammon back down now? So good on Becky Hammon. Fan of hers. But yeah, she's standing by it. But she issued a challenge. Prove me wrong. To Jalen Brunson. What else? Not good news, and I always seem to end the show in these bad places. Sorsby, that quarterback for Texas Tech, he has been denied reinstatement. Yeah, being an athlete in gambling, I don't know the ins and outs of this thing, but college quarterback was gambling on college athletics. Yeah, no. Sorry. There's many things, and if you have been on a college campus with the football team, you know that those athletes can get away with a lot. That's one thing they can't get away with. So this seems to be the right thing. And then what is it? A day that ends in Y, another NFL player in trouble facing domestic violence charges. This time it's Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but it happens a lot, it seems, in the National Football League. So there you go. You're all caught up on, I just present the news. I don't filter the news on what's good, what's bad. But just want to keep you up to date on everything that is going on. And I think that's about it. That's going on. Game 4. 7:00 tonight, Extra Sports 1300. Or you could watch the game at the Brass Tap on Bass Pro Drive. $3.50 pints, Coors Light, Coors Banquet, Miller Lite, Mountain Time. Sports, Spirits, Social, the Brass Tap. Speaking of social, great conversation today. You guys on the text line, dropping the comments on the live stream. That makes the best day when I'm in here, is when we're interacting, debating, discussing, and we did that today. Let's keep that same energy up, and let's talk Game 4 tomorrow, one way or another. Like I said, I can't bring myself to out and out pick the Avalanche tonight. All I can say is that I think the Golden Knights will win, but I have not been right about a single game in this series. See how that goes. Enjoy your evening, whatever you may be doing. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.